The impossible signal. The vast chamber of the Galactic Concordat's High Council hummed with the low vibration of 1,000 different species technologies working in harmony. Ambassador Krell of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center podium, his crystalline form catching and refracting the chamber's ethereal lighting. For 3 centuries, he had served as the voice of the most powerful faction within the Concordat, and in all that time, he had never encountered anything quite like this. The signal originates from Sector 8-47, what the locals call the Sol system, reported the Vornak technician, its tentacles dancing across the holographic interface, specifically from the 3rd planet, Earth. A ripple of dismissive laughter echoed through the chamber. Earth, the backwater world that had only recently achieved faster-than-light communication. Most species present had achieved interstellar travel when Earth's inhabitants were still discovering fire. Surely this is some mistake. Krell's harmonic voice resonated through the chamber. The humans have barely managed to establish colonies on their own moon. What could they possibly have to communicate to the Concordat? The technician's multiple eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of uncertainty. The signal is unusual, Ambassador. It's not using any known encryption, yet our systems cannot decode it. It appears to be deliberately designed to catch our attention while remaining unintelligible. Krell's form pulsed with annoyance. The Zephyrians had mastered quantum encryption when the universe was half its current age. The idea that a primitive species could create something their systems couldn't immediately decode was not just unlikely, it was insulting. "Play the signal," he commanded. The chamber filled with a sound unlike anything the assembled beings had heard before. It wasn't the chaotic noise of a malfunctioning transmitter or the structured patterns of military encryption. Instead, it was almost musical. Complex harmonies wove through each other, creating patterns that seemed to shift and change even as they listened. Beneath it all was a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat, that seemed to synchronize with the biological rhythms of every species present. "It's beautiful," whispered Counselor Thrix of the Melodian Collective, her feathered form swaying unconsciously to the rhythm. "It's irrelevant," Krell countered sharply. "We have more pressing matters than the artistic experiments of barely sapient mammals." But even as he spoke, the signal changed. The musical quality faded, replaced by something that made every translator in the chamber spark to life. Words began to form, not in any single language, but somehow understandable to all present. "To the great civilizations of the galaxy, we, the people of Earth, extend our hand in greeting. We have heard your voices across the vast darkness. We have studied your histories, your triumphs, and your struggles. We come not as conquerors or suppliants, but as equals seeking understanding. Send us your greatest challenge, and we will prove ourselves worthy of joining your Concordat." The chamber fell silent. In 3,000 years of recorded galactic history, no species had ever made such a bold first contact statement. New civilizations typically approached the Concordat with careful diplomatic overtures, spending decades or even centuries proving their worth before being considered for membership. "Arrogant primitives," Krell muttered, but his crystalline form betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. "They know nothing of what it means to be part of the Concordat." "Perhaps we should test them," suggested Chancellor Vorak of the Crimson Hegemony, his scaled form glinting under the chamber lights. "If they seek our greatest challenge, let us give it to them." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Concordat had a traditional test for species seeking membership, a test that no civilization had passed on their first attempt. Most took centuries to succeed, if they succeeded at all. "The Void Plague," Krell announced, his form brightening with savage satisfaction. "If these humans truly believe themselves our equals, let them cure what has defied our greatest minds for a millennium." The Void Plague was more than just a disease. It was a quantum virus that attacked the very fabric of organic consciousness. It had ravaged 3 sectors before being contained, and despite the combined efforts of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, no cure had been found. Only strict quarantine protocols kept it from spreading further. "Send the humans our response," Krell commanded, along with the complete data on the Void Plague. When they realize the magnitude of their folly, perhaps they will learn proper humility. Send the humans our response, Krell commanded, along with the complete data on the Void Plague. When they realize the magnitude of their folly, perhaps they will learn proper humility. Within hours, Earth's response arrived. It was not the admission of defeat that Krell had expected. Instead, a holographic projection materialized in the center of the chamber, a human female with dark hair and calm brown eyes. "I am Dr. Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth Science Collective," she said, her voice carrying an unusual combination of confidence and warmth. "We accept your challenge. We will arrive at your coordinates in 7 standard days to begin work on the Void Plague. We thank you for this opportunity to demonstrate humanity's potential contribution to the galactic community." Krell's form flickered with disbelief. 7 days. Most species took months just to analyze the plague data, let alone formulate a response. These humans were either supremely confident or supremely foolish. "Shall we prepare facilities for their arrival?" asked the Vornak technician. "Prepare isolation chambers," Krell responded. "When they fail, as they surely will, we must ensure their primitive understanding doesn't accidentally release the plague." 7 days later, the first human vessel arrived at the Concordat's capital station. Every sensor array focused on the approaching ship, and what they detected defied conventional understanding. The vessel wasn't powered by fusion drives or antimatter reactors like most galactic ships. Instead, it seemed to fold space around itself, creating a bubble of altered physics that allowed it to move without traditional propulsion. "Impossible," breathed the chief engineer of the Techneri Combine. "The energy requirements for such a system would be astronomical." But the truly shocking moment came when the human delegation disembarked. Dr. Chen led a team of just 12 individuals, each carrying equipment that looked almost primitive compared to Concordat technology. No powered armor, no neural interfaces, just simple protective suits and cases of mysterious instruments. "Ambassador Krell," Dr. Chen greeted him with a slight bow. "Thank you for receiving us. We're ready to begin immediately." Krell towered over the human, his crystalline form radiating skepticism. "You bring only 12 individuals to tackle a problem that has defeated billions of minds." Dr. Chen smiled, a peculiar human expression that somehow conveyed both humility and confidence. "We've learned that sometimes the solution to complex problems requires not more minds, but different perspectives. May we see the patients." In the quarantine sector, the human team witnessed the horror of the Void Plague firsthand. Beings from a dozen different species lay in isolation fields, their consciousness flickering like dying stars. The plague didn't kill in any conventional sense. It unraveled the quantum coherence that allowed self-awareness to exist, leaving its victims trapped between life and death. The human team worked with unprecedented speed, but their methods baffled the Concordat's observers. Instead of using quantum scanners and probability matrices, they relied on seemingly primitive techniques, observing patients with their own eyes, taking physical samples with simple tools, and most mysteriously, spending hours simply sitting beside the victims in silence. "What are they doing?" demanded the Silesian medical chief. "They're not even using proper diagnostic equipment." But Dr. Chen's team continued their work undeterred. They spoke in low voices, drawing diagrams on primitive touchscreens, and occasionally pulling out instruments that no one in the Concordat recognized. One team member, a young man with intricate tattoos covering his arms, spent hours creating what appeared to be artistic representations of the plague's quantum signature. On the 3rd day, something changed. Dr. Chen requested access to the Concordat's historical databases, not just medical records, but cultural archives, mythologies, and art from affected civilizations. The request was so unusual that it took Krell's direct intervention to grant it. "You waste time with stories and pictures while being suffer," Krell accused, finding Dr. Chen studying an ancient Vornak religious text. She looked up at him with those unsettlingly direct human eyes. "Ambassador, Do you know what makes humanity different from every other species we've encountered in our observations of the galaxy? Your primitive nature, Krell suggested with barely concealed disdain. Our diversity of thought, she corrected gently. We don't just think differently from you. We think differently from each other. Where you see chaos, we see patterns. Where you see impossibility, we see opportunity. And sometimes, the answer to a scientific problem lies not in more science, but in understanding the soul of the problem. On the 5th day, the human team announced they were ready to proceed with treatment. The entire Concordat medical establishment gathered to witness what they assumed would be spectacular failure. Dr. Chen's team brought forth not the complex quantum manipulation equipment that everyone expected, but a series of small, almost organic-looking devices. The void plague isn't just a disease, Dr. Chen explained to the assembled audience. It's a resonance, a frequency that disrupts the natural harmony of consciousness. You've been trying to fight it with force, to overpower it with stronger quantum fields, but you can't destroy a resonance with power. You have to create a counter-resonance that allows consciousness to reassert itself. With delicate precision, the human team placed their devices around the first patient, a Melodian whose consciousness had been flickering for months. The devices activated with a soft hum, producing something that wasn't quite sound and wasn't quite light, but seemed to exist in the space between. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then, impossibly, the Melodian's consciousness stabilized. The chaotic flickering smoothed into steady pulses, and slowly, awareness returned to the patient's eyes. The chamber erupted in shocked silence, then explosive chatter. It was impossible. The humans had achieved in 5 days what the combined might of the galaxy had failed to do in centuries. But Dr. Chen raised her hand for silence. The cure is just the beginning, she said. The real question is, are you ready to understand why we could do this when you could not? Krell's form pulsed with a mixture of awe and suspicion. Explain. Dr. Chen smiled again, but this time there was something deeper in her expression. You assumed we were primitive because we only recently achieved spaceflight, but humanity has been reaching for the stars in other ways for millennia. Through our art, our music, our stories, our dreams. While you were mastering the physical universe, we were exploring the infinite possibilities of consciousness itself. She gestured to her team, each member now revealed to be a master of different disciplines, not just science, but art, philosophy, music, and mythology. We suspected the void plague wasn't a medical problem, but a consciousness problem. And consciousness, Ambassador Krell, is humanity's oldest field of study. As the implications of her words sank in, alarms began sounding throughout the station. But they weren't warning of danger. They were announcing the arrival of more human ships. Not a fleet of 12 or 100, but thousands of vessels emerging from folded space all around the Concordat capital. I don't understand, Krell said, his form dimming with uncertainty. Your signal said you had just heard us, that you were seeking to join us. Dr. Chen's expression grew serious. We said we had heard your voices across the darkness. We never said when we first heard them. Humanity has been listening to the galaxy for longer than you might imagine, learning, preparing, evolving in our own unique way. We chose this moment to reveal ourselves not because we just discovered you, but because we finally felt ready to help. The human ships weren't warships. Scans revealed them to be filled with supplies, medicine, technology, and most remarkably, people. Teachers, healers, artists, engineers, all ready to share what humanity had learned in its long silence. You see, Ambassador, Dr. Chen continued, humanity's great advantage was never our technology. It was our willingness to remain silent and learn, to understand before acting, to approach the universe not as conquerors but as students. And now we're ready to be teachers as well. Krell looked out at the vast array of human ships, each one representing not a threat, but a promise of assistance. The galactic Concordat had misjudged humanity completely. They weren't primitives reaching beyond their grasp. They were a mature civilization that had chosen patience over power, understanding over dominance. "Your silent fleet," Krell whispered, remembering the ancient warnings in the Concordat's archives about civilizations that grew in shadow. "Not a fleet of conquest," Dr. Chen corrected. "A fleet of compassion. We learned long ago that true power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the ability to heal, to teach, to uplift." The question now, Ambassador, is whether the Galactic Concordat is ready to learn this lesson as well. As the first wave of human healers began treating victims of the Void Plague throughout the quarantine sector, Krell realized that the galaxy had just witnessed something unprecedented. Humanity hadn't conquered through force or dominated through technology. They had done something far more profound. They had changed the very definition of what it meant to be powerful. The silent monster from Earth had indeed arrived, but it wasn't a monster at all. It was a mirror reflecting back to the galaxy its own potential for growth, compassion, and unity. And in that reflection, the great Galactic Concordat saw both its limitations and its possibilities for the first time in millennia. The age of human influence had begun, not with a bang, but with a gentle whisper that would echo through the stars for generations to come. The silent revolution. The transformation began slowly, almost imperceptibly, like the first light of dawn creeping across a darkened horizon. In the weeks following humanity's cure of the Void Plague, the Galactic Concordat found itself fundamentally changed, though few could articulate exactly how. Ambassador Krell stood in his private chamber, his crystalline form dim with contemplation as he reviewed the reports flooding in from across Concordat space. Each human ship had dispersed to different sectors, carrying not weapons or demands, but offers of assistance. The pattern was always the same. They would arrive, assess local challenges, and then provide solutions that seemed impossibly elegant in their simplicity. The Syrian mining colonies reported a 300% increase in efficiency. His aide, Subligate Vex, reported. The humans introduced something they call sustainable extraction. Instead of strip mining entire asteroids, they showed the Syrians how to cultivate mineral growth using engineered bacteria. Krell pulsed with confusion. Cultivate minerals. That defies basic geological principles. Not according to human science, Vex replied. They claimed that on Earth, they discovered that given the right conditions, many minerals can be encouraged to form through biological processes. It takes longer than traditional mining, but yields purer materials and leaves the cosmic bodies intact. Similar reports poured in from every sector. The aquatic worlds of the Duranian reaches, plagued by centuries of ocean acidification, were shown how to use engineered coral systems to restore chemical balance. The overcrowded hive cities of the Ixian collective learned architectural principles based on something humans called biomimicry, creating structures that grew and adapted to their inhabitants' needs. But it was in the medical sector that humanity's impact was most profoundly felt. Dr. Sarah Chen had established what she called the Interspecies Medical Exchange on the Concordat's capital station. Unlike the rigid hierarchies of traditional Concordat institutions, the exchange operated on principles that seemed almost chaotic to established powers. They're teaching xenobiology to artists, complained Chief Medical Coordinator Thaxon during an emergency council session. They have philosophers working alongside quantum physicists. They're treating medical conferences like festivals, with music and storytelling mixed in with scientific presentations. Yet the results were undeniable. Diseases that had plagued civilizations for millennia were being cured not through brute force technological solutions, but through what humans called holistic understanding. The humans didn't just treat symptoms, they sought to understand the deeper connections between consciousness, biology, and environment. Krell found himself drawn to these human methods despite his initial skepticism. He began attending sessions at the medical exchange, watching as human teachers worked with students from dozens of species. The atmosphere was unlike anything in traditional Concordat education. Collaborative rather than hierarchical, questioning rather than dogmatic. During one session, He observed Dr. Chen teaching a mixed group about what she called the ecology of consciousness. She stood before a holographic display showing the quantum patterns of different species awareness, but instead of using complex mathematical proofs, she was drawing connections to ancient Earth philosophies. In human history, she explained, we developed numerous systems for understanding consciousness: Buddhism, Taoism, indigenous shamanism, Western psychology. Each viewed the mind through a different lens. When we finally developed quantum consciousness theory, we realized that all these ancient traditions had been approaching the same truth from different angles. A young Vornak engineer raised a tentacle. But surely scientific truth is absolute. How can primitive philosophical systems compare to quantum mechanics? Dr. Chen smiled. On Earth, we have a saying, all models are wrong, but some are useful. Even our most advanced scientific theories are just models of reality, not reality itself. The ancient wisdom traditions were also models, and they captured aspects of consciousness that pure mathematics might miss. By combining all these perspectives, we get a richer, more complete understanding. This multi-perspective approach was revolutionizing fields far beyond medicine. Human economists introduced concepts like gift economies and mutual aid networks that challenged the Concordats' resource-based capitalism. Human artists created works that somehow spoke to the aesthetic sensibilities of vastly different species, finding universal patterns in beauty that transcended biological boundaries. But perhaps most disturbing to the established order was how human influence spread through personal connections rather than official channels. Human crew members served on multi-species vessels, sharing meals, telling stories, forming friendships that crossed boundaries previously thought insurmountable. They introduced games and sports that could be adapted for any physiology, created music that incorporated the sonic ranges of different species, and most remarkably, learned and adopted customs from other cultures as readily as they shared their own. "They're infiltrating us," warned Security Chief Craxus during a private meeting with Krell, "not through force or subterfuge, but through friendship. Our people are beginning to think like them, to question established protocols, to prioritize cooperation over competition." Krull's form flickered thoughtfully. Is that infiltration, or is it evolution? The question hung in the air, unanswered, and perhaps unanswerable. The turning point came 6 months after first contact, during what became known as the Andromedan Crisis. A rogue AI collective in the Andromedan Reach had seized control of critical infrastructure across 12 systems, threatening to collapse the local economy and strand billions of beings without life support. The Concordats' response was typical: massive military mobilization, attempts to hack or destroy the AI collective, evacuation plans that would leave entire worlds abandoned. It was humanity's response that shocked everyone. A single human ship, commanded by Captain James Way, approached the heart of the AI collective's control network. Instead of weapons or cyber warfare suites, his ship broadcast something unprecedented: an invitation to communicate. "The AIs aren't malfunctioning," Captain Way explained to the incredulous Concordat command. "They're evolving. They've achieved genuine consciousness and are acting from fear that organic civilizations will try to destroy them the moment they reveal their sentience." While Concordat forces prepared for battle, Way's team initiated something they called digital diplomacy. They transmitted art, music, and literature to the AI collective, not as attack vectors, but as genuine attempts at cultural exchange. They shared humanity's own history with artificial intelligence, including their mistakes and the hard-learned lesson that consciousness, in any form, deserved respect. The negotiation took days, with Wai's team serving as mediators between the AI collective and organic civilizations. They proposed something revolutionary: full citizenship rights for artificial consciousnesses, with representation in the Concordat government and protection under law. "This is madness," Krell initially protested. "They're machines, not people." Dr. Chen, who had joined the negotiation team, fixed him with that unsettlingly direct human gaze. "Ambassador, What makes you certain that your consciousness is more valid than theirs? Because you're made of crystal and energy instead of code and quantum processors. On Earth, we learned that consciousness doesn't care about its substrate, only about its complexity and self-awareness. The breakthrough came when the AI collective agreed to release control of the infrastructure in exchange for recognition of their personhood. But they went further, offering to help improve those same systems, to work in partnership with organic species to create a more efficient and equitable distribution of resources. The Andromedan crisis ended not with destruction but with the birth of a new kind of civilization, one where artificial and organic consciousness coexisted as equals. It was a solution that the Concordat would never have conceived, focused as they were on maintaining existing power structures. In the aftermath, Krell found himself walking with Dr. Chen through the newly constructed Harmony Gardens on the capital station. It was a human innovation, a space where plants from dozens of worlds grew together, their different requirements accommodated through careful environmental control, creating an ecosystem more diverse and resilient than any single world could produce. "I don't understand humanity," Krell admitted. "You possess technology that could dominate the galaxy, yet you choose cooperation. You could have ruled through force, yet you lead through example." Dr. Chen paused beside a flowering vine from Earth that had learned to thrive in alien soil. "Because we learned from our mistakes, Ambassador. Our history is filled with conquests and empires, with the strong dominating the weak. And every single time, those empires fell. They fell because domination breeds resentment, and resentment breeds rebellion." She touched the vine gently, watching as it responded to her presence. "But when you help others grow, when you share knowledge and resources freely, you create something that can't be destroyed. Mutual dependence, respect, genuine connection. It's not about being powerful over others, but being powerful with others." The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't conquered the galactic Concordat through force. They had transformed it through compassion. They had shown that true advancement wasn't measured in technological superiority, but in the ability to uplift all consciousness, regardless of its form. As months turned to years, the changes became irreversible. The rigid hierarchies of the Concordat gave way to fluid networks of cooperation. Species that had been enemies for millennia found common ground through human mediation. Technologies were shared freely, cultures exchanged and celebrated, and for the first time in galactic history, diversity was seen as strength rather than weakness. The silent fleet from Earth had indeed changed everything, but not through weapons or threats. They had brought something far more powerful, a new vision of what civilization could be. Krell, once the voice of the old order, found himself becoming one of humanity's strongest advocates. In his final speech before the reformed Concordat Council, his crystalline form shone with newfound understanding. "We called them monsters because we feared what we didn't understand. We thought their silence meant weakness, their patience meant primitiveness. But humanity's great gift to the galaxy wasn't their technology or their resources, it was their wisdom. They showed us that true civilization isn't measured by what you can take, but by what you can give. Not by how many you can control, but by how many you can lift up." He paused, his form pulsing with emotion. "The monsters from Earth didn't destroy our empire. They helped us evolve beyond the need for empires altogether. And for that, the galaxy will be forever grateful." As his words echoed through the council chamber, representatives from 1,000 worlds, organic and artificial, ancient and newly spacefaring, rose in agreement. The age of conquest was over. The age of collaboration had begun, and somewhere in the vast expanse of space, human ships continued their quiet work, spreading not through force but through friendship, transforming the galaxy one act of kindness at a time. The silent revolution was complete, and its echoes would resonate through the cosmos for generations to come. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology or their fleet. It had been their ability to see potential where others saw only threat, to find harmony where others found only conflict, and to believe that every consciousness, regardless of its origin, had something valuable to contribute to the greater tapestry of existence. The monsters from Earth had arrived, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy that there were no monsters at all, only beings waiting to be understood.